Okay, first question that I have. Is this the same Phil Collins?
Yes, it is.
It is.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Yes, it is. Good God, so it is. Where do you got hold of this here, did you?
Yes. I work at a record store, and I found that in our 69-cent bins,
Right.
which means that it's old and forgotten.
Yeah, old forgotten
Gotta get rid of
it.
it.
Yes.
So I saw that
Blast
on
from
the
the
back.
past. I had that T-shirt with me in the very drawer, in fact.
That's
No, it's very old.
Sure.
Oh yeah, there you are. God, you look really like John Mayhew then.
He's running it, isn't he?
He looks crazy. Yeah. What an amazing collection.
Tony, what sort of musical training did you have?
Well, I had classical piano training at school up until I was about 17. And I had a bit of trumpet tuition as well at one stage. For about a year.
Was Genesis your first experience with rock, or?
Yeah, I mean, Genesis was like a school group. The first album, Genesis Revelation, was made sort of shortly after I'd left school. In fact, some of us are still at school, as it happens. And
so, were all of you that were on Genesis Revelation schoolmates?
yeah, it was just a school group. Those days we used to do sort of, we started off kind of almost as a sort of soul group, you know, just doing all those shredding material and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then we sort of developed. We made this tape of stuff, which progressed to making that album.
Phil, what other groups were you in besides ARC-2?
Well, Flaming Youth was the band. Well, a lot of insignificant bands, really. I mean, they're insignificant, but even more insignificant than that. You know, I mean, a lot of semi-pro bands from time to time. And I did some acting for a bit too, which was sort of had a period of about 5 or 6 years between playing in bands and not.
Was that on a professional basis?
Yeah, but I was playing drums all the way through that period.
How did you end up in Genesis?
Well, that band split up. Well, actually, I left that band the week of its split, and the same week there was an advert which didn't mention Genesis, but it was Tony Stratton Smith that caught my attention because I knew him from an earlier band. I thought, you know, I was a drinking companion of his, and I thought I'd go along and see him and sort of maybe get the job, but it wasn't as easy as that. I had to play, so I just went for the audition. Phoned up Peter, who was presumably the guy who was organising the audition, but no, I suppose.
No, it was just happened that we had his house was most convenient, so we used his parents' house to do the auditions.
Yeah.
Were there any other notable drummers that auditioned? Any people who might be famous now?
There's no one who's famous now, no. I don't think so. We went through about 15 drummers. He was the second one we auditioned, and there were 3 of them which would have been good enough, which he was one.
They may, well, I suppose.
Maybe. I mean, one hasn't a clue. I can't remember most of them, you know. Some of them were really awful, you know, just guys who sort of came out from really hadn't a clue what they were doing. And, but as I said, there were about 3 that were good enough, and he was the best of the 3.
Now, these auditions were taking place between the release of Trespass and Nursery
This
Rhyme.
was, in fact, it was just
Before
as
the release,
Trespass. It was before the release of Trespass, in fact. The other...
John Mayhew.
Well, no, Anthony Phillips was the original guitarist, right? He left.
Right.
And at that stage, the band almost split up. But I said that, well, I was going to leave as well, but I said to Mike and Pete that, you know, I'd stay on if we got rid of the drummer, John Mayhew, and try to start again, you know, with a rather better drummer and a better band. And so we tried that. In fact, when we got him, we went around as a 4-piece for quite a while because we couldn't find a guitarist. This is before Nursery Crime, and we got another guitarist, a guy called Mick, who we had for about a month, and then we kicked him out because he wasn't quite good enough, and then we got Steve shortly after that.
Do you think of The Knife as sort of the standout cut from Trespass?
I think it's the worst track on the album. It's a funny thing, I mean, it's certainly the most popular audience number, but that's because it's heavy and beaty. But I think it's the least original track, and it was probably the earliest of all the tracks written on that album. It was just like, it was a fun track to play, and it soon developed into a good audience number, and we used to finish the act with it, sort of, because it got good applause and things. But it was, I mean, the numbers that mean most to us on that album, I think, are Stagnation and Looking for Someone, which are kind of the sort of start of trying to do sort of tracks which had a continuous theme with lots of different musical ideas to sort of, you know, contained in it. Those are the tracks the most fun to write, and I think they prove to be the most sort of successful in the long run. You know, people now tend to, rather than the knife, although the knife always gets called for at concerts, the tracks that seem to be the most popular with people who sort of like us seem to be things like Stagnation.
Do you think you'll ever be doing those live?
Probably not now. I mean, we can play Stagnation on stage, but it's rather an old number now, and the knife we can play as well. And again, that's we've played the knife some sort of 600 or 700 times on stage. It means nothing to us now, absolutely nothing.
Yeah. How do you choose which numbers you're going to play live?
Well, we start off when we have an album. We just play the tracks that we can, and slowly you find one or two tracks just aren't making it live, either because you can't play them, or because the audience just don't like them at all, you know, as live numbers. And and then you start arranging the set according to where the sort of the lifts come, which numbers go down sort of best, and you try to sort of position the track so that you have the good audience numbers, sort of like breaking up the set between the numbers that you really like to play, you know?
Yeah.
And that way you end up with a better balanced set.
In listening last night, I know that there's a lot of edits in the disc version of Firth of Fifth, and it seemed to me that you pulled off all the transitions that on the album were engineered. It seemed to me that you pulled them off well enough that maybe they didn't need to be engineered on the
A
album.
lot of things are sort of middled out. I mean, there's grand piano. I mean, it's not practical for us to have grand piano at this stage, so it's really like a middling out of just finding the sort of best thing for each.
Yeah, the thing is, you see, the trouble with the whole of that album is that we hadn't played any of it on stage when we recorded it. If we had done, we might have tried to do a continuous version, and then maybe I'd have dubbed on the grand piano afterwards. Yeah, I mean, the edits they're a bit obvious. Well, there's one edit in particular which is rather obvious in the first, which is a bit of a shame, but I mean, it's just one of those things, you know. If we'd had a chance to record it again, maybe we'd have been able to iron out that.
Do you usually have all your numbers down performance-wise and have played them in concert before you record them?
No. It was straight the Trespass album. We'd played every number on the Trespass album on stage, a lot.
There was a musical box, wasn't there?
Musical box.
Nursery Crown, which was a stage thing, and there's
Watcher of the Skies, which was a stage number. But other than that, all the others have been recorded before we played them. We don't like doing that, but it's the way it tends to happen, because you kind of take a period off for writing the album and recording it all in one.
I know a lot of people who are probably familiar with the live album were wondering what happened to not only the knife, but Giant Hogweed and Devo.
Well, that was our old set, you know. When the new, there's no Selling England tracks on the live album, obviously.
Right.
So I mean, the Selling England tracks had to displace some of the other tracks from the act, and the knife was just an encore number. And if we ever have to do an encore, we probably still do that, but we don't like doing encores. Well, the only place we ever have to do encores is in Europe, where they're a bit
violent.
They're a bit violent if you don't, so you do them. But I don't like doing encores because, like, the knife isn't such a good number as suffers really. It's a pity to kind of do a worse number after what you think is your best number. I mean, you know, the thing is, plans to leave a certain kind of taste in the mouth at the end, you know, and hopefully, to do the knife, you come away with a sort of feeling you've been sort of let down a bit, I think. No, I mean, some people would anyhow.
Yeah, I mean, people want to hear more, but they don't, in fact. You know what I mean? I think what they want to see, or they want to either hear their own personal favourite, which chances are they're not going to hear, or the best of what they've heard already. You know,
it's just much easier to shout out knife than it is to shout out Salmar, Fountain Salmar.
Or Can Utility and Coastline.
Yeah, right, and people sort of shouting trying to get these things. You sometimes hear a guy in the front row sort of saying, timetable, you know, it just isn't as loud as knife, you know.
Right, or Harold the Barrel.
Harold the Barrel, actually.
We did that for a bit. We tried doing that as an encore. We thought we'd try and put a bit of new life.
I was wondering if some of the lesser known numbers from Foxtrot and Nursery Crime were ever going to find their way.
Well, we do sometimes do Harold the Barrel. We even put it in the set once or twice recently.
See what? We had one a specific concert that came up in London, right, which was going to be at the Wembley Empire Pool, which we didn't actually play in the end. But when it was talked about, there was the idea of us doing two sets of it, re-rehearsing all the old material, and doing one set and then doing the new set, which had been the new album. I think it was.
But that would only make sense in England, where we're sort of well known, you know.
So one of the things on one concert gig like that, you'd be able to do things, have grand piano, have things like timetable.
One thing that I'm kind of curious about is on most of the albums it says all titles done by all. How do you start with an idea and work it out?
Well, there are it happens two main ways. There are either the songs that start with just a short idea, maybe, and someone just plays a few things, and then we all join in and just develop it. And what might start as a 10-second idea might develop into just a series of ideas. and the original idea might get blown out easily, you know? But it's and from that might develop a whole song. Other people suggest ideas that might go with it, and you build up. But those tend to be the longer numbers, and they also tend to be the better numbers. The other way of doing it is if a person has a whole number, virtually, and you know, and then the band kind of arranges it. During the period of arrangement, it can change an awful lot, and you know, it becomes very much a group composition, even if it did, you know, come mainly from one person. These tend to be sort of the shorter tracks in general.
Do these things get written out, or is it all pretty much kept in everyone's head?
Oh, it's all head arrangements, yeah. There's,
Never write it down.
sometimes, I mean, like we'd play an idea that we wouldn't use at that moment, but we'd use it eventually and put it on tape.
We've got things on tape, yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering because certain themes are often repeated by the different instruments, such as Steve's repetition of the flute thing of Peter's.
Yeah, I mean that's just a thing. I mean that was part of the song.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I wrote most of that song, you see, and like the flute, it was just like a melody line, which
Right.
I thought would sound nice done on the flute, and it would also sound done nice loud. In fact, when we tried it loud, it sounded really amazing. You know, we tried it loud first, but I knew it sounded good, quiet as well. You know, in fact, we didn't really try that until we got in the studio, did we? The quiet version of it.
I don't remember actually, to be honest.
We didn't. You know, it's quite a difficult thing to make sound good. You just got basically a bass line of bass and piano with a flute thing on top. It's rather difficult to make it sound good.
The lyrics seem to have, you know, a very unifying sound to them. Is one person responsible for the lyrics, or
Or for the fifth, particularly, or is
No, on all tracks.
on any of them?
Oh, well, generally it's, I mean, Mike and Tony do a lot of lyric writing together, and Peter does some by himself. I do odds and sods.
Yeah, everybody writes lyrics, you know.
Yeah,
It's just like it's rather
Well,
difficult.
is there any one who has the real penchant for the puns and things?
I think
Oh, well, like
I think
that-
Peter's the best
yeah.
lyric writer in the group. Well, certainly for his own voice. I mean, you know, which is I think. I mean, the lyrics I like by him best are the ones where he's sort of being amusing, like the Battle of Epping Forest and Get 'Em Out by Friday, things like that. That's kind of Peter's lyrics. I think they're the sort of thing he writes best. What more can I say?
most of what we do, in terms of stage presentation and music and deciding where we should stay on tour, you know, are usually done by vote.
Yeah.
Consensus.
We do have, I mean, the whole the original idea of the band very much was a sort of group of songwriters who would perform their own music, and where everyone would take a sort of like an equal role.
Right.
We sort of discovered at some stage that Peter had a sort of a much better way of sort of moving and could do more things on stage, better perform than all the rest of us, and so he turned into sort of like a natural sort of focal point, if you like, of the group, which is great. I mean, so that's worked very well. In fact, it's almost worked too well.
Yeah,
because people tend to sort of think that Pete does rather
Right.
more than he does. He's only, you know, the focal figurehead. It's
Right.
it's nothing to, you know, other than that, he's no stronger than the rest of us. But I mean, you know, it sometimes bugs us that in England it gets to the stage sometimes where people think that he does sort of everything. But
Yeah. Well, along those lines, what was the general group opinion of the Midnight Special performance?
didn't
We haven't seen it.
Don't want
You
to
haven't seen it.
No, we had a screening lined up in LA actually when we were there, but none of us went to see it. I'm convinced that it served its purpose, in as much as it got us to a lot of people who might be curious to come and see us from it. And also, I mean, for instance, on the way when we arrived in New York on this tour, I mean, the cab driver coincidentally said, what band you with, you know, with Genesis. Oh really? I remember seeing you lot on Midnight Special, man, with the funny faces, you know.
Yeah.
And that's all he remembered, but
Right.
he was like a 40-year-old black taxi driver. And so if you're getting to people like that, then chances are you're getting to quite a few people.
Just
Right.
it pushes the name around, means that people when they see the album might think, what's that name, you know? I recognise the name, listen to the album.
And
It's
also-
like, it's the one thing that people remember about is the Midnight Special, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And then we know, from what I can gather, it was mainly Peter's thing. There was
Yeah,
very
it
little of
was.
the band.
I would say it was 90% where Peter's head was filling the screen, and I found that a little bothersome because
Well,
I wanted
well,
to
the
see
thing
much
was,
more of what was going on.
we had probably the easiest. That was probably one of the easiest television shows we've done. In which they were pretty much cooperative, and they wanted to try and put over what we were trying to do. You know?
Right.
And
Oh yeah, I was
but
very
because of
surprised.
the amount of aggravation we had trying to get things like the ultraviolet eyes out,
Right.
and just that, they probably thought because they got it right, they'd they go to town.
It's a bit
with it,
wrong. I
so-
mean, you see the whole idea of the introduction of Watchers to what you saw it on stage last night. It shouldn't be me, but it
Right.
should be the whole band just there, very still in this sort of weird lighting. Unfortunately, in the Winterland, you've got the UVs all over the place,
Yeah.
which ruins the effect of the UVs. The idea is we come on in complete darkness, and when I play the first chords, the UVs come on,
Mhm.
which looks really nice. But unfortunately, last night the UVs were on all the time. And then you
Like
just
taking goals in Newcastle. Or bringing Levi's to San Francisco.
What LPs are your personal favorites of the batch?
Well, I think the latest one is always the favourite, really, Selling England. I mean, it's just that on that one we managed to get the production is the best produced album. It's still by no means perfect, but it's the best produced.
Yeah.
And the playing is much better on
The
it.
newer one gives me more pleasure listening. I mean, I still go with all the songs and the composition and arrangement of all the album, but like it, when you listen to them now and you're getting better results from production, and you listen to how a song, like the differences between the live versions of Musical Box
Right.
and the studio, for instance, and Hogweed too. It just makes you think that if they could be done, if we've had a bit more experience
Right.
in production, it could give us.
Yeah, I prefer the live performances on those
Yeah.
two myself.
Yeah, certainly
Had
Hobby
more
was
bite.
pretty bad on Nursery Crime. I
Yeah.
think it was, I thought it was really good on the live album. I was very pleased with it actually. And so the Musical Box as well was much better. But my personal favourites, I think I really like Trespass very much. I've always had a very soft spot for that. Because on that one, because the production was so weird on it, you got a strange kind of sound. We sort of like, on things something like Stagnation, we used about, I don't know, 6 to 10 guitar tracks. And the idea was to sort of to play around with them and fade one in and fade another one out all the time. But in fact, we ended up by using all of them all the time, which produced a very sort of strange sound. And then you've got these great massive guitars, all
Got a nice atmosphere,
and
actually.
it gives a very sort of nice sunny afternoon feel. I don't know.
Phil, do you have any favorites? Or?
Well, I like that album too, actually.
Trespass.
Yeah, I wasn't on it, so it's
Yeah.
that's for a fan. That is. But no, I mean the latest one is my favourite, and because as I say, we're all playing better. And personally, we're playing better. But I like Supper's Ready. I still listen to that.
It's a great.
That worked very well live. On record.
Yeah, I thought it came off excellently last night too.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans for expanding your drum set? I mean, there seems to be a new trend, at least with Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and yes,
Well, yes,
to put the drummer in a showplace atmosphere.
No,
with
we've been having talks about going on rostrums simply, but that's more to put Peter on a lower level, us, and so he can work in between our areas. But that probably won't happen anyway. No, I don't. I can't get into all that, I'm afraid. I don't mind a big drum kit, but I just don't want to be on a platform so people are looking at me with me revolving. I
Right.
don't really want to get into that.
How does the show that we saw last night differ from what's generally presented in Europe? Because I heard rumors about Peter being lifted by a crane after
We did
a
that.
flash
That was
of
a
light.
special thing, you see. It wasn't a general thing. We did that at the theatre in London where we did five nights, and because it was a theatre and because we were there for 5 nights, we could afford to do rather more special effects. We did a few more things, and one of them was to fly Peter at the end on Supper's Ready. You just suddenly, when the flash goes, you suddenly sailing up in the air.
Right.
That's exactly.
We thought Santa Monica was going to be able to have that actually, but we weren't able to do it there either.
So it's partly governed by where you play and
Well, yeah, I mean, we could have done it, but
Ceiling
it
has
costs
to be strong enough for
$1,000 to do it. For the guy to come in and risk his neck supposedly risk his neck from jumping off a ladder so he can go up. You know what I mean?
Oh, so it's just a counterweighted type thing.
Well, yeah, so I believe.
It's like a pulley system. Yeah.
Right.
And these people do these things for like Broadway shows and all that kind of. So they don't need a band to come in and say, "Here, can you do it for $50?"
You can afford to do it. If you have 5 nights in the same place, you can do it. Well, they probably had the facilities.
They had their own guy there, I think. Actually.
Yeah,
didn't
that,
they?
and also in London, because our expenses are incredibly low, because we all live there, you can afford to be slightly more ambitious in what you do.
Yeah, there's some pictures that have come out actually. For that reason, we thought best not to, because people might come expecting it, in the press releases and things.
Right. What was your general feeling about last night's show? How would you rate it?
It was the worst tour we've played on the tour, definitely. The worst sound.
But as far as your performance goes, indeed.
It was all right. I didn't think it was a great one, but it was all right. It was like it was a strange gig really, because the audience was very strange.
Yeah.
I thought the audience
They remind me of the Lou Reed audiences at the
I thought they were very good tempered considering they stood up for the whole show, and I thought that most of them, I would say a majority at least, went away into it. And a few
there was a lot of nice people in there, so it was a nice reaction.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the concert.
Oh.
Whereas again to us, I mean, like we weren't disappointed in that because to us,
We weren't
coming to San
expecting
Francisco
it to be
first
so
time,
Mhm.
you know, aside from the place, everywhere we've been, we've had like a small group of people that have been into it since the beginning and had albums. But I mean, each place you go that you haven't been to before, you don't expect. We've played tours that big in other places and got fewer people, but it's still been a good concert.
Do you think you'll return?
Oh yeah, I don't know. We'll probably end up playing there again actually, unless it's somewhere else.
Well, we might not, actually. Well, you're so vulnerable when you're doing the sort of quiet bits, you know, because you've got the 2,500 people there last night. I mean, and you only need one guy.
And Supper's Ready actually has got. That's when they started. You know, during the introduction to Supper's Ready,
Mhm.
and then the musical start. And we have two quiet parts in that number that, I mean, really go down to just nearly acoustic level. You know?
Right.
And I was waiting.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, like,
Waiting.
you know, if you haven't got
Yeah.
people, and those sort of bits can be so effective because you can really hold an atmosphere just
Right.
across those bits. But if
Right.
you've got people,
See,
it just
we-
takes one guy to say, you know. Something.
We had one concert with Lou Reed in Toronto, right, when we first played in Toronto, and it was a really ugly thing. I mean, the sound, our truck was late. The sound, Shoko's truck was late. This was when Lou Reed was hiring. I know Clare Brothers. They were hiring Clare Brothers, so we were using their system. And Lou Reed was late for his sound check too, and it was snowing. And there's 8 o'clock get-in for the audience, and by 10 o'clock he finished his sound check, and our equipment was up, and they let the people in, right? Well, these people had been out in they were Lou Reed's audience out in the cold for 2 hours, right? So they came in, and we were setting our equipment up, and they thought we were the cause of the trouble. So when we came on, it was like, you better be fucking good, man. And,
Yeah,
you
shut
motherfucker. And like, going on stage, you know, and like, hearing that is like a really, you know,
The best atmosphere.
it's sort of, you know that every quiet part that comes up, as soon as they realise it's quiet for more than a few seconds, they're going to start shouting. In the end, it was all right. You know?
Right, actually, well, we had the flash at the end of Funk.
Yeah, they usually wake all the downers up, you know.
They also, oh,
Do you think that with the direction Genesis is going and where they've been in the past, do you think that Genesis should have a large following? Or do you feel maybe that it is more just for a select group?
Well, not really. I mean, not judging by sort of the European situation for us, you know. I mean, like in England, it's good now, and in Italy, it's always been good, and Belgium's always been good. And Germany,
Age groups
are growing. You know, it's
age
just
groups are very, very wide too. I mean,
we find-
very young and very old in England, for instance, with
I want to
people.
encourage that as well. One thing I really dislike about rock music is the way that it's so sort of geared to hit people between the ages of sort of like 12 and 22, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
It's sort of, it seems illogical to me. I mean, people of 60 can enjoy it. I mean, people of 60 do enjoy it when they're dragged along because they have to come because it's their uncle or something. Their
Yeah.
uncle, you know. They suddenly find they really enjoy it, you know, things like that.
Yeah,
For whatever reason, I mean, my two uncles came to see the show in London, and they thought it was rather amusing, you know. I mean, Peter's costumes. I mean, for whatever reason, they enjoyed it.
Do you think of your music as being possibly for everyone?
Yeah, I don't see why it should be limited really. I mean, it's not particularly. It's like we're not like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, in that we use sort of like very strange harmony a lot of the time, things like that, and we don't do things for sort of like technique's sake, so that any sort of technique people can get into it. And, I mean, it's the whole thing is we do things based on what we like ourselves, and all five of us have to like it, and we've got quite wide tastes as a group. So I mean, we cover a very wide spectrum of possibilities. I so, and if people are prepared to listen to the music quite hard, I think an awful lot of people can like it. We can never get through to the straight rock and rollers. I mean, that's one sort of people we can't get through to, but we can get through to people who like music a lot on any level. I think.
Right.
I mean, if people like sort of classical music a lot, I think they could like us if they give us a chance. You know?
Well, if you were in my position, you know, say working at a record store,
Is it? Oh.
how would you describe your music? How would you try and tell someone
Bit
what
like
Genesis
yes.
is about?
Well, what do I say? I have no clue really.
I don't know. Actually, I mean, I'd probably end up saying
Like it,
like so and so, like so and so. Imagine this, imagine that.
One thing
Right.
you know, like it is a. we do, everything's built from melody. That's what I think makes us different from groups like Yes and Emerson, because I think they do a lot which is kind of unmelodic.
Linear.
Yeah, different.
I remember as being quoted.
Well, yeah, that's a different effect. I mean, the other thing is that we're a band of contrasts in sound. Like we have very loud bits, very quiet bits, and things. Which was a lot of other groups just like tend to go along a level. And when they have a loud bit, it's a bit louder, but it's not much louder. And then they go when they're quiet, they're pretty loud, you know, and things like that. We like to go right back down to just sort of like one acoustic guitar and voice or something.
Right.
Just really quiet things, because by doing that, you make the loud bits much more effective. They come in as a real sort of, drama.
Was the presentation theatrical right from the start? I mean, were the things that you were doing on Genesis to Revelation?
No, I mean, when we just on that album, I mean, it was a school group. We just.
Do you consider that as just sort of a throwaway?
Yeah, it was a different era. We did it. We'd never played on stage when we made that album. In fact, we'd never played together. The first time we ever played it was in the studio, and we just sort of made the album. Just some songs that we'd written, and it got released. It didn't really go much further than that. It was produced by a guy called Jonathan King, who's sort of like is now sort of a commercial.
Yes, he's with UK Records.
Yeah, right. He was really great for us.
Everybody's trying to wriggle.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Very fine record. I'll go and buy a dozen copies.
This
one? Ugo Juggy.
He gave us self-confidence in ourselves, and he basically the band wouldn't be together if it hadn't been for him. So I mean, he did that, and then we started to sort of think about playing live. And when we started playing live, we just did a few tracks off that album and a few we'd written since then. It was basically we just went on stage and did it. We didn't think about it at all. But because our PA was sort of like 50 watts and everything else was like sort of 100 watts. You couldn't hear, well, everything was 50 watts actually, but if you want PA, you won't hear it. And you didn't hear any vocals at all. In fact, all you really could hear is distortion, I'm sure. But so Peter decided he wanted to do some things that would make the lyrics come out a bit stronger, so he sort of moved his hands a bit, and things like that, and danced around a bit. And then as the band sort of went further and further, it developed the idea of wearing one or two sort of like costumes of some kind to try and get it across.
First thing was like the cover of Foxtrot, when they had the woman with the fox's head.
That one.
Yeah, we did that on one of our tours. We put on a dress and fox's head, which was our first claim to fame.
So then
we discovered this guy was on the front of all the music papers.
Yes. Suddenly it was our earnings doubled.
Actually, the difference was absurd. I mean, when you started wearing that thing, I mean, suddenly it's absurd, really. It's just that at last the press people had found something to write about us. Always before they've been trying to sort of describe the music, but not really making it and saying, not really writing anything because they couldn't think to say. And suddenly there was a guy who was wearing a dress and a fox's head, so they could say,
before this,
a band
before
with a guy
this,
with fox's head.
before the costumes were coming about. I mean, the only way we could sell Peter was being sold to the press as being a guy who was very difficult to talk to because he was sort of stuttering or thinking about what he was saying, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he went through a sort of, whenever you asked him a question, you go, and the guy, and he was presented as a Lou Reed character, like he's weirder than Jim Morrison and Lou Reed, man, and all this kind of thing. So at least it got rid of all that. Mm-hmm. Now we just got to get rid of all this.
But then the theatrical aspect actually sort of grew out of a necessity to overcome bad PA systems? Or?
Yeah, it really was, to get just so that you get across some of the lyrics. Because the idea is to make all the characters used in the act are like very like gross overstatements of things in characters in the songs, like in Flowers, and the black and white people in Sub is really sort of for evil and good, and the slides, like a later development, it's just a question of finance, really. And right from the very word go, from stagnation, we always wanted to have moving films with our music, We haven't got that far yet, because that costs an absurd amount. But just the idea of pictorially representing, because the music is very pictorial, and a lot of the lyrics tell a story.
Oh, yeah.
And it'd be very easy to do, sort of just short films, and the idea of the slides is to do sort of like that kind of thing.
If a guy's got a hood, a stocking over his head, and they can associate that, then when he changes from that into something else, they can sort of go with him and start relating to whatever they're hearing. In that respect.
Did Peter develop all those masks himself?
No. The idea is
he goes to the mask maker and sort of.
They work out sort of possible ideas.
He goes with the characters he feels may be strong, that could be brought out, and they discuss I've never been there. This is what I believe happens. They discuss, you know,
Possible things. I mean, what Peter can wear and what the mask maker can make successfully. And quite honestly, when we were, you know, for the last tour, there were an awful lot of masks and things we didn't use. They just weren't good enough, you know. And you end up with a few that are strong, like the old man's mask, which is probably the best of all of them, really. Which is a very simple one. I mean, you can almost buy those in sort of in shops, you know.
Right.
But they really work. They're great. And
when did you start the idea of having a cyclorama, the wraparound curtain in Bath?
for a very long time, actually. We must have had it now almost what? When we first started, it was a white curtain. We just had one white curtain went round the back, and we used to use
2 years ago, wasn't it?
2 years ago, I think, with ultraviolet lights we used to use, which lit up the whole curtain because it was white and it was treated with stuff that made
Actually,
it
it was
sensitive. The front cover
of the live album was
Right.
That was an American gig. Actually, that was Princeton. That was taken out, but it was that was the original
thing we used to
idea
have
that we
about
did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That.
I know that from my background with TV, I had assumed that this picture was from a television performance because most studios have the wraparound
Yeah.
curtains.
No, the idea was just that the fact that didn't see much necessity to have equipment showing. It would be sort of a bit of an eyesore.
You felt
Just
that
like
it was
that-
more
that-
of a distraction.
When we first did it, I mean, like, you know, every group there was had a stage with a few stacks along the back, you know, and every group looked the same. And every group looked pretty awful for that reason. And in order to make a set, we just wanted to make it look nice. So we used a completely, a curtain that wasn't an acoustic barrier at all, but by using sort of lights, made it look kind of solid. So it looks like a draped curtain, you know, like a thick curtain. And yet you can't see any gear because all the equipment's just behind that. It's just there's ordinary stacks behind it that you just don't know.
Have you ever had problems with, say, a sold-out concert where there are a lot of seats behind the curtains?
Well, we
Yeah.
have to work it out in advance, and we have had trouble.
We did one concert in England, for instance, where the guy sold them. The people went around the front and got tickets for the next concert.
It can be a problem in sort of circular places, particularly.
Right.
It's very difficult to know when you stop. I mean, that cuts off about 2/3 of the thing.
In Rome, what happened in Rome? They just didn't come
Well,
around the back.
we were in such a position that it worked out all right. It's difficult. Basically, he took thousands of photographs. After we'd suggested various ideas to him, and we picked out what we liked and what we wanted to use. That was all.
Yeah, he picked. I mean, some of the ideas were his own, right?
Oh yeah, some of the ideas, like the masks.
There are a few things that he came in with that we hadn't thought of that we've used, and there's a few things that we suggested to him that he'd take and that we are now using, you know.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, some of the slides are lights men's.
That's only one number.
One number, yeah. There's some that are from two different people in there.
Yeah, I mean,
Rod-
basically it's a sort of like a conglomeration of slides we've had taken, which we like. Some of the ideas being the guy who took them, and some of the ideas being ours. You know, we know roughly what we wanted for various bits, you know. And then
So for various pieces, you do coordinate the slides or whatever.
Oh yeah.
it's all coordinated.
Yeah, it all comes up. It's
So-
supposed to be the same every night, and sometimes you occasionally get a bit of one number floating in another. But if all goes well, then they're all specifically, roughly around the same bar or 4 bars a piece or whatever. I mean, it's not that wooden that comes in on the beat, but the guy who's doing it, like he sophisticates his way of doing it the same way as we sophisticate our way of playing.
Yeah, when I was watching and listening at the same time, I was just noticing amazing parallels. Like, really, you're the most visual band I've ever seen, and that includes bands who supposedly go out with their raving guitars and do a lot of legwork, like Humble Pie, for instance. But your visual approach is so tied into the music, and yet it's like almost removed into another plane or another dimension. It's not a physical plane in the sense where you're actually going out and doing something with your instrument,
Yeah.
trying to get screams or whatever. But it's a very cerebral, and yet your organ just sort of lifts that whole group up to go along with the visual image. And I was thinking when I was watching all that, what Peter's doing visually, combined with the slides in the film and along with your music, it's very much like, to me, comic art. It really is, because it's like removed one dimension away from reality, and yet it's a higher reality. It's almost like a purification process. It's very, very enjoyable.
Well, we're trying to sort of like produce a sort of, I mean, with the lyrics and the music originally, and with the whole set now, a sort of like fantasy thing. It's just supposed to be like, it is pure escapism. Well, no, we've got no message whatsoever. We really have no social comment in our numbers. I mean, only the very vaguest sort of way. There's really no attempt. So it's just purely written for the fun of it.
and people should listen to it for the fun. It's escapist music, you know.
The visual fantasies really help that. Like
Yeah.
For instance, that mask on the
Yeah.
helmet that Peter's wearing is.
I mean, basically, whatever
Very
tools
effective.
that you can use and are practical to go on tour with, that's going to help you create a mood that you're trying to do in your music, then all well and good. I mean, the next stage, I suppose, or you can get into, is something like the Floyd have done with where most of their music starts becoming like soundtrack music as opposed to standing up on its own right. You know what I mean?
But you see, with us, it's unlike. I mean, every visual idea comes afterwards. You know, we never do something because we think, well, that'll look nice. Now, what can we put with that? We just.
I heard Dark Side of the Moon for the first time the other day, and it's a great piece of music, you know. But I was watching it with something, and I thought, well, if that wasn't there, would it hold my attention? You know, because it was definitely something that went hand in hand with the visual thing. You know what I mean? Which is very nice. But I mean, it's you start to become a bit slightly Miyazaki in a good way, if there is a good way to become Miyazaki. And it was supposed to vibe sort of transport cafe stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you see the review of in Rolling Stone of Selling England by the Pound?
Oh, I think I did.
Mm.
Was that the one that sort of slagged it off?
It was too wordy.
I mean, Epping Forest, that's the first thing you listen to.
Right.
And it probably is.
I sort of feel people listen to one track and review the album. You can't blame them when they've got too many albums to listen to, you know.
Yeah.
Because
I think it was a British guy that did it, actually.
See, the thing in England, we've reached a stage where we're popular enough to be slagged, as it were, as opposed to sort of like, if it was an American person, you might sort of say, well, you know, I'm not going to.
British underdogs, you know.
Yeah, it's a small group. Let's say what's good about them rather than say what's bad about them.
Right.
You know, and it's unfortunate that it goes to an American audience, written by an English guy. It's the wrong way around, really. Should it help?
Yeah. I read an article very recently in We Magazine that was talking about the stereo systems that a lot of the reviewers used to listen on.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
that was very enlightening. That was
I'll
very
tell you,
enlightening.
when I've been to interviews in England, this is, or in London, twice, at different places, both one the NME and one Melody Maker. They're both I mean, I've been shocked, you know. I mean, it really is. I mean, okay, so the material should stand up, whatever it sounds like. I mean, accepting that, but they had a sort of record player about that big,
Right.
with one speaker, and it was one of those things with a flat top like that, wooden, you know, and it was mono, and it was incredible. I mean, maybe that's the way they prefer review records, you know,
Well,
like, down to the roots. But
You can't hear half the things on the album that way.
no.
Yeah.
I mean, how can something that is built on production to a certain
Right.
extent come over, you know? I mean,
Exactly.
Well, first of all, you cut off half your frequency spectrum, you lose all your lower end, and certainly everything after 9,000 to 10,000 cycles and stuff like that. That's almost criminal
Yeah.
to try to review.
Yeah.
I mean, something like Rainbow and Curved Air, for instance.
Right.
If you listen to something like that, which is very nice under the right, I mean, it's beautiful under the right circumstances. If you got, you know, if you're just listening to it on a very nice setup in the right atmosphere, it's one of the best albums, you know. But you listen to it in the cold light of day in a Fleet Street office.
Right.
With this mono thing, we just had a couple of pints down a boozer.
Right. Well, do you think that could be one of the problems, that when things come over the radio, you know, maybe a lot of people are listening on equipment that doesn't allow them to appreciate the music?
Well, the standard of radio equipment here is much higher than it is anywhere else I've been. I mean, I say in America.
Yeah.
I mean, just like it's car radios, you know. I mean, the way I think that's the overall production and sound that you get from an average car radio here is
It's brilliant.
far superior.
Yeah, in England it doesn't affect us because we don't get played on the radio.
Yeah. But yeah, unfortunately here in America, radio airplay is becoming the way for people to
No kidding, right.
Well, that's
hear
the-
about things.
I mean, you can get classy singles now,
Mhm.
which is good. I mean, here it's healthy. If you release a single, you're not selling out. You're releasing a single to broaden your market and,
Right.
and get played by FM, and it can still be a nice piece of music. You know, it doesn't have to be a 3-minute commercial.
Yeah.
Bang,
Well,
bang,
it
bang.
seems to me that's what Electric Light Orchestra does. They put one single-worthy piece of material on their albums. It becomes a hit, and then I guess maybe they're selling the rest of their music. Either that, or they've got a lot of disappointed record buyers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really couldn't see I Know What I Like as a hit 45 in any manner. Although I really like the song, and I was.
Well, so we did.
I
We
did, because
had-
I've got a catchy chorus, see?
Yeah, we have one on every album. I mean, we thought either Watcher or Willow Farm would have been a single from Foxtrot, and Seven Stones we thought was a good single from Nursery Crime. This is mainly because of the length. I mean, like one gets tempted to,
Oh yeah.
you know. But I mean, even so, we all felt they stood up as singles. And either record company people didn't agree, or it was like I Know What I Like. I think was probably left too late in England, you know, after the release of the album. All the people that would have initially bought it and got it into the charts, like the album, already had it on the album. You know, and
Right.
much as they're fans, it isn't worth buying a, you know, what, I don't know how much a single, $1 or something. They haven't got a dollar to throw around on something they've already got. You know?
Right. Of course, the way to get around that is to maybe put something that hasn't been released on an album
Yeah.
on the other side.
This
let it
could
known.
be the turning
We
point.
did put something on the other, hadn't we released the album on the other side. I Know What I Like. It's called Twilight Ale House.
On a lot of DJ ones, they've got
Yeah,
A
the
lot of
DJ ones
are
are
double-sided, but in fact
right.
on the American version it's on the B-side as well.
Yeah,
More
because
convenient
I've
also,
seen that
so-
advertised.
In what?
in Portugal. I saw.
Portugal.
They didn't ask anybody what they wanted on the B-side. They just put the shortest track on the album. Amazing.
Yeah, because I've always seen the ads in Melody Maker for Twilight Ale House on the other side. I was wondering,
Well,
how can I
actually,
get a hold of that?
A lot of them.
Well, it is, I think it does on the American version. It has
Yeah,
got
it may
Twilight
well
on
be,
the
I don't
side.
know.
Because I'm
Yeah.
talking to some guys about it, because these guys in Atlanta said they tried playing All I Like, got no response, and somebody told them to play the other side. They played the other side and they got an amazing response. You know, thousands of people sort of, well, not thousands, there were two phone calls, but they seemed very enthusiastic about it. They said let's release that as a single instead. It was a very popular track of ours in England, and if we'd recorded it at the same time as Trespass, which is when it was sort of written, that era, it would have been good. But as it is, we didn't record it until Foxtrot, and by that time we were sick of the number, we were sick as we are of the night.
And then we mixed it when we did this album, the last one. So it was lost that a bit, you know. It was mixed at 5 o'clock.
So was the personnel on Twilight Ale House the same as
Yeah.
Trespass?
No, same as Foxtrot,
Same as Foxtrot?
because we recorded it then, but it was written by the Trespass crew. A lot of people like it, a lot. In England, it's a very popular track. I don't know why. I liked it when we've written it, so maybe I just ordered it.
Where are you going from here?
Seattle tomorrow, and then Vancouver.
Are you midway through it? You started?
We're about 4 weeks into it now. We've got another 5 weeks to go, which is mainly concentrated between Chicago and New York.
See, last time you did Los Angeles, breaks you Los Angeles.
Yeah, we only did. Was the only thing we did on the West Coast was LA.
Yeah, I know that the drummer that I think of when I listen to your music is Billy Cobham, for sure. I think it especially comes across on Selling England by the Pound. It's just a very, very Cobham-like sound to it. It's perhaps not as fast yet.
Oh no, it's not as. I mean, I don't. You know, I mean, I admire Billy
Yeah.
Cobham greatly. I mean, I think he's the best drummer in the world at the moment. You know, that in the popular music
Right.
that I know of. And there must be hundreds of drummers. If he just comes up, I mean, he's been around a long time. But I mean, if you just, there must be people like.
Yeah.
Better, you know.
I don't. Did you ever
Better,
hear?
how do you say better?
Did you ever hear the group that he was with before, Dreams?
Yeah, I heard a couple of tracks, but
It's hard to believe that that's the same drummer.
it's a bit too like Blood, Sweat and Tears. And
Yeah.
what I heard, I heard, you know, I was into Mad Vishnu,
Uh-huh.
and I'm from the beginning of Mad Vishnu, and I since bought up all his old albums, apart
Right.
from the Dreams thing, because I didn't really like it.
Right, because I remember that I got a hold of the Dreams album, and
You mean Dreams, the band Dreams?
The band
He
Dreams.
did an album called Dreams with Larry Coryell too, you see.
oh no, I meant the band Dreams, right, with Doug Luban and Jeff Kent and Michael and Randy Brecker, all those people. I remember thinking that the drummer was good, but it's really hard to relate that Billy Cobham to the one that's doing things now, because it's such a difference. Maybe it was the restriction of the music.
Yeah, well, see, he was playing a different kit than he was like on the first Mad Vishnu album. He was playing a single kit. I mean, a single bass drum kit.
Right.
And his playing was very tight and crisp. And now it's incredibly fast and flexible.
Yeah.
But it's a lot wider and a bigger thing now. I mean, you know, 2 bass drums and 7 tones. But I mean, no, I was going to say, I mean, I admire the guy, but I mean, and I'm influenced by him in the same way as I'm influenced by a lot of good drummers. You know, I mean, I listen to the best drummers that I like,
Right.
and consequently, one hears things you think, yeah, that's nice. How does he do that? And you try and do it. You know, you sort of then you get over that and you do it. You end up doing it your way anyway.
Right.
But,
You are familiar with the Spectrum album, right?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, he does some mind-blowing things.
Yeah.
But I don't think this. You know, he gets a particularly good drum sound on it, all the records he gets. So he has. It's the drums he uses, I'm sure. He also hit them very hard.
Yeah. Do you and Michael usually spend a lot of time working together on your parts? Because I notice, especially on Selling England by the Pound, just fantastic tightness
There's a lot.
with the bass drum work and the bass guitar.
There's a lot of the slower things. There's a couple of
I know
things.
what I like.
I know what I like was we recorded it with him, Mike playing sitar, electric sitar,
Right.
and Steve playing guitar, and then and me playing the drums. So we dubbed the bass on, and he took, he learnt my part, which is a great way of doing it, believe me.
Yeah.
Because you get some. I mean, I'm not hindered by anybody, like by listening to anybody else in terms of what I'm playing rhythm.
Right.
And you can get it perfectly in time. We only did that for that number, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
The couple of-
Battle of Epping Forest is the one that comes to my mind.
Yeah,
It's
well,
just
that-
having
that-
the
That
best.
built up as being a very tight number right
Yeah.
from the beginning.
Yeah.
We were, in fact, the thing developed from a sort of, the basic rhythm developed from a bass riff,
Mhm.
which is sort of the drums kind of were applied to, as it were.
How do you usually find those rhythmic patterns used? Because I've never heard anything like them. They're just very unique.
I remember the 9/8 one. I remember how that was discovered. The Apocalypse in 9/8,
Right.
which is because I remember we were in this very small Blackheath, right?
Yeah.
And Mike came up with this. It was the same. The sound of the chords were the same, right, as the recorded version. But there was no fixed time signature at all. It was completely anything. We just had a jam and just sort of wasting time. And then it was tied down.
Well, what I said to Mike and Steve, if they could just stick to 3 notes, then it would give me scope I could do a whole solo using thousands of different chords if they just used 3 notes. So we built up a riff just out of 3 notes.
And that was in 4/4.
And
And then she just just knocking a beat out and singing out. I mean, it was, it was done like that. There were certain things like 7/8, the 7/8 thing rhythm. That was one of Mike's rhythm guitar things.
Yeah, Mike's quite good at these kind of things. I mean, he probably because he sort of loses track of a rhythm while he's playing it. He kind of ends up with something good. You know what I mean? I mean, that's
In other words, it starts off
I don't
at
mean that.
4/4 and develops.
Sometimes, well, the thing like the sort of the bit in Cinema Show that's in 7/8 is like you're basically dropping out a half a beat in every bar, really, and that's all you're doing. And it just sounds nice, and it sounds very natural after a bit. Once you started playing with it a bit.
Actually, yesterday I tried to play. One of the things I do in that, I was trying to play it in 4/4, and I got so used to playing it in 7/8 that I could not do it.
I found I started improvising in 7/8 instead of anything any other signature now. It's absurd. You got so used to thinking about sort of this time signature. You keep leaving out a beat. 7. In fact, I think 7 is a very natural rhythm. You get very used to leaving out a beat. Just half a beat in every bar like that is incredibly natural.
Epping Forest is in 7 too.
Yeah, Epping Forest.
And that was done the same way. It's done so it feels very natural all the time. We've yet to come across one that we can't have trouble with.
I don't. One doesn't want to feel. I mean, in fact, the one in Watcher I think is a less natural rhythm in a way, even though it's only a 6/8, 6/4, which is an easier time signature. But it's just a sort of. It was a rhythm that's supposed to be a kind of a rather just a difficult rhythm. Was the idea. They're not just built on it.
Is that a 6/4?
Have you listened to Brubeck much when you're always doing those experiments of different time signatures?
No, take 5, of course, is.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the standard, but he had 2 or 3 albums.
Right, no,
He did the Unsquared Dance. It was in 7/8, and that was the first time I came across 7/8, and I really liked it. It was a very simple one done with claps.
Right.
And I mean that was the basic 7/8. When I got into being able to clap that, it was probably when I first started getting interested in sort of like time signature, when I could clap it. It was kind of a challenge. I mean, he said on the record, I think,
Yeah, it was
try and clap along
stated
with
on the
this
back
one,
of the
right?
disc.
And so I tried, and I got it together. And, great.
So did you start out with any sort of musical training, or did you start with snare drums and paradiddles and ratomacues, or?
No, I started off from. I mean, like.
Were you pretty much self-taught?
Yeah, I was totally self-taught from when I was about. I had my first proper drum kit when I was about 12.
And
I had my first proper drum kit when I was about 8 or 9, and then.
Is that when you chose to set it up in the reverse manner?
No, that came a bit later, because at this time the drum kit was comprised of like 2 bars of wood like that, about that wide, with a pole on each with a triangle and a couple of tambourines laid skin up, and I used to hit them. But then when I was 12 I got a first drum kit, and I don't know, I never thought twice about just changing it round to the right way. I was always aware that when I was watching other bands, like the Beat Ringo, for instance, his tom-tom would always be on the same side as mine when I was looking at it on television. And I used to think, something's wrong here, So, but I never thought of changing it around.
It's not that you're left-handed or anything?
Yeah, I'm left-handed.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, I'm left-handed in everything apart from eating. I think. But
in relation to the drummer on Wishbone Ash, are you?
no, I just got the
Has
same
anybody ever
haircut.
told you that?
No, I got Steve Stills. Who else was I?
Steve Stills.
I get quite regularly. No one ever actually, no women ever recognise me as being like these people. It's always.
The drummer from Wishbone Ash and you could pass his brothers, the resemblance.
Yeah, well, actually, we played with them the last tour, and I can see what they mean. I mean, it's only the fact he's got short hair and beard, and he's about the same height. But when I was about 16, I went to drum lessons to learn to read, to like the paradiddles, rat and the cues, as you say, and then try to learn parts, sight reading, which I was getting into, and then I stopped going to the teacher, and he died, and I've since gone back to an earlier teacher.
Does everyone in the group read music, or?
No, I'm the only one who can really sort of read music. I mean, he can read drum music.
Well, very loosely.
But I mean, I've never really had to use it. I mean, for a group or anything. I mean, the only advantages I've had from the main advantage from having been taught classically, for me, for the band, the fact that I can transpose very quickly and things like that, you know, which none of the rest of the band can do.
He knows the quickest way to get from one key to another.
I got 25 best ways of getting from one key to another. I use a lot. In fact, 7 stones is an exercise in getting from key to key. We have these 2 bits that are in different keys, you see, and I didn't want to change the key of either of them, because once they both sounded good in the keys they were on, the mellotron. And because the mellotron's a very funny instrument, it sounds good in certain keys, you know? And so I didn't want to change them.
Can you recall exactly or fairly close the release dates of most of the albums?
Yeah.
Because
One
I'm
a year.
kind of curious. I know
Release date of
this has a
that-
copyright 69 on it, but
Yeah.
that usually tells little.
Yeah, it was released in 69. And Trespass, well, it was released, I think, was it actually released in 70 or 71? Where are we now?
70 probably. August 70.
No, it'd be 70. Yeah, 70. It would be 70. I never think of there being a year between those 2 albums, but I suppose it was a bit longer, about a year and a half at least between the albums. Trespass was 70, and then after that, been every year. 71 for Nursery Crime, 72 Foxtrot. The live album came out early in 73, and sang in late 73.
Were you going to use the logo? It would seem to be on Genesis Live all the way back through Nursery Crime. Has that been sort of dumped, or
Yeah.
was it ever considered actually your logo?
It was used a lot
yeah,
on
we did use it at a certain art.
posters and things for gigs. But it was
It's the same artist did Foxtrot and Nursery Crime.
Right.
we tried
Paul
to find
Whitehead.
different logos, didn't we? In fact, for various things, for type,
Right.
programs, whatever. And then nothing really sort of grabbed us.
What
but
about
we've changed it now into
The logo that's on your equipment boxes? Or
No.
that's not going to be used?
No, I don't know. It's pretty. I mean, it's just
we haven't really got a logo that we're satisfied with. We used something for the last tour, but I mean, it's not going to stick because it wasn't very good.
I think the one with the G, you know, the G that goes like that.
Yeah.
That's the one that
We're using
we'll
at the moment.
be using at the moment.
But we haven't had anything as good as sort of like the original Yes one. That was great. Just the little blue with the Yes written on it.
Right.
They should never have changed that. Their new one isn't nearly as good as that. But that was so distinctive, you know what I mean? It was something, it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't beautiful to look at, but it was just something,
I remember the Move had one too.
did they?
Yeah. It's weird. You get. I mean, like
What, you mean,
good
you mean
logos
there's the
sticking-
cloud with the M and the underlined small O and everything? Is that the one?
No,
you're
the one
thinking
they
of?
used to have in England when they were just starting. They used to have there'd be stamps everywhere saying that, and the M was like point at each end, you know, and it was joined together like that, and then it sounds pretty ordinary now, but I remember it being quite wild.
Argent had a very good one as well. I think.
Who?
I mean, just Argent. Just,
Yeah.
Oh,
just
the
things that are
neon
distinctive,
A?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just very distinctive things like that are good. But we never had one we're satisfied with.
So you're still sort of searching for one?
Well, yeah.
Not too actively, I take it.
I don't think, well, we haven't really found it's been a particular loss, you know. It's like,
Right.
but it's nice to have, I mean, it would be a good sort of, you know, obviously advertising would be easier if you had something like that. So it was
Yeah.
consistent.
Have you ever thought of hiring Roger Dean for any of your covers?
No.
I don't particularly think, I don't think he's very good. I mean, you know, everyone's, you know, he's obviously, a lot of people like him very
Yeah.
much. I thought the cover of the triple album was very similar to the cover of one of the other albums.
Well, his work's
It's
very
just-
similar, but
Yeah.
He's definitely connected.
I mean, he's obviously, a lot of people think he's very good, you know, but like we used the same guy for 3 albums because we liked the first one he did, you know, and I don't think the third one was as good as the first. I think if you have a different person, it gives a refreshing difference to the album, you know. I mean, a lot of people thought that Selling England was a very different album from the previous albums, purely because they had a different cover, I think. It just gave a different feel. When you looked at the album, right from the word go, you thought this is probably going to be a bit different. And we'd like to do this with every album. And I mean, because there are a lot of artists who are great, you know. We really like the artists who did the Selling England cover.
Do you think you want to get to the point where you'll have maybe a double album? Or
Well, it's a question of time, really. I mean, as far as the group's concerned, we'd like to make sort of like 5 albums a year, but and not tour. You know, we prefer making albums, I think, although it might get boring in the end. I don't know, but in theory, we prefer to work in the studio. So, given a chance, we'd like to do a double album, but we can't do it just at the moment. So
The next album's going to be recorded at the house that we're renting to write it in.
oh really?
We're going to have a mobile down there, so the next album will be very, very different in sound. Hopefully it will be better.
Will John Burns be engineering?
Yeah.
How long have you got on that so far?
But we have hardly moved on it, really. I mean, what we've done is we've done a lot of writing on our own.
We must buy it. So. Let's buy our album.
You don't have to worry about that.
We're on Revolver backwards now.
Yeah, right. Thanks about it.
Yeah, we've written some up ourselves. We haven't written anything as a group yet, which is when the album sort of takes shape, and we're going to start doing that when we get back to it.
So has John Burns sort of been pretty much assigned a permanent spot within?
No, I mean, for the time being, he's certainly the best we've got, you know. And you see, I think basically we'd like a producer, but we've never found anyone who's really been suitable at all. We've got to be someone who we can respect totally, and who really knows what we're trying to do. And we never found anyone. You know, I mean, John Anthony and David Hitchcock were irrelevant. Well, John Anthony was relevant to some extent. David Hitchcock was completely irrelevant. They were just people there, you know.
Yeah,
they twiddled a few
I've
notes,
noticed
but they basically got in the way more than anything.
Right.
And on Foxtrot, we worked with John Burns.
Mm-hmm.
But half that album, see, we did with another guy, which is why it's a bad produced album.
Yeah, David Hitchcock seems to have a lot going with John Burns in one way or another, because I just picked up an album by Camel, and
Really,
that was
the work, it was no partnership, it was just a question that...
Yeah.
John Burns is a resident island engineer,
He's a
right?
resident engineer.
And as a lot of bands obviously use Ireland, they might have either turned on to Dave Hitchcock via our management, or via our record, or via another band that he's done. He does Capability Brown too, another charisma group. And that was probably where the link came. But I mean, see, Watchers, Can Utility, Get Out Live Friday, and Timetable, right? They were, and bits, or that all that side was done, and Twilight House were done by one engineer that walked out on us because he didn't dig it. You know, it was quite all right actually. I mean, he was. We both sort of. We knew it wasn't working. He knew it wasn't working.
Can Utility actually was done with John.
With John, was it? And but then we had a stage from after him leaving, and us suddenly with the next day in the studio, no one to do it. You know, someone, and we all felt that we needed someone we could trust. There's another guy came in, and we did half of Supper's Ready with him, and that was a bit of a disappointment, wasn't
Yeah, the first part of Supper's Ready.
First part, and then we found John, who was only another resident engineer, and he just seemed to make it.
We did the second half of Supper's Ready, and
You mixed the line down.
of Supper's Ready and half of Can Utility, which is really the best produced part of the album is the second 2/3 of Supper's Ready, I think. You know?
We don't trust many people, but I mean, occasionally when we've had to have radio material put together, live concerts mixed for various radio shows in England, I mean, he's done things. We've let him do things by himself because he knows the music. He captures a feel.
Yeah, well, a lot of groups that are into arranged and produced music seem to be adopting an engineer as their fifth,
It's a question
sixth, seventh
of
member.
finding someone who just is good, you know.
Right.
There's no real attempt to keep the same person. I'd like, if it was possible, I'd prefer to use different people for everything, every album, because that way you get a different sort of atmosphere and a feel for each album, you know, and a different interpretation maybe, or a different,
Right.
just
Thereby,
something to refresh you.
right, avoiding the ruts of people like the Moody Blues.
Yeah, the Moody Blues, I mean, they've gotten a terrible run. You know?
Yeah.
They're the first, not Days of Future Past, but the 3 or 4 albums after that were good. I think has some excellent tracks on them, you know, but since that, it sort of gets less and less interesting after that.
Right. Well, it always seemed to me that outside of Days of Future Past, you only needed one Moody Blues album to hear whatever they're, to hear everything that they're doing, because they just haven't done anything really new.
I mean, some very nice songs though, just on individual tracks. You know.
They appear to have cut themselves off from sort of what's happening. I mean, they seem a very weird group in as much as you don't ever hear about them. They occasionally do a few gigs, but
Yeah.
they seem to sort of, to
They're
me,
selling
they seem like
12
middle-aged.
albums, so
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
14 million albums or something.
So is Burt Camper.
Yes, I know.
James laughs.
Well,
Look at him.
how similar the audience is, isn't it?
Oh, do you just by any chance, Brian Chapman was the other name on that Flaming Youth album that I recognized, and I just cannot.
He was with Jackson Heights,
Okay, that's it. That's.
and
that's
he's
what
now
I'm
getting his own thing together. John Anderson's producing his album. Gordon Smith, don't know what he's doing.
By any chance know what Michael Giles is doing these days, do you?
Last thing he was doing was Grimm's, a group called Grimm's, which was made up of various offshoot poets from various other groups. Shoot, I forget all their names actually. Adrian Henry.
Tony, have you ever listened to Gentle Giant by any chance?
Not really. I mean, a lot of people talked about James Giles, particularly sort of saying that's sort of slightly similar to us, or they're a good group. I've never actually heard them because they never made it in England, so you don't get the music forced on you.
Yeah, well, they haven't really made it here either. I remember reading a review that said they've got a bigger following in America than in England, and I thought,
sure.
oh God, it must be
No, we got a bigger
abominable.
following in America than in England. It's a bigger country. We
Well,
sell more albums out here than we have in England.
Really?
And you sell 30,000 albums in England, you're in at number 5. You know, you sell 30,000 albums here, and you're at 180 or something.
Right.
You know, and we sell 30,000 albums in New York State, apparently. I mean, I give that figure because that's the only
Right.
figure I've ever been given about our album sales in America. But I know that around Foxtrot, we were told that had sold something like that in New York State. No anywhere else, but just New York State.
So more in California.
Oh, well, that, I mean, this
Oh,
is
selling England.
before
Selling
two-
in sold. I don't know how many sold.
This is
but
before
it must
this
be
tour,
approaching
before the last
100,000 to
tour.
America.
So,
I mean, it's
middle of last year.
in England, for a record to be a hit record, you know. I mean, selling England got to about number 3. I mean, it doesn't really have to sell many. I mean, it's probably about 70,000.
Depends on what time of year it is too. Doesn't it? And we came out at a bad time, didn't we? We came out just before Topographic Oceans, Pin-Ups, The Who, Quadrophenia. All these albums were just coming out as we were.
Right.
And we did well, but then, yeah, it went straight in at number 3.
How do you do it without much airplay? Because I don't know.
Well, it's
Radio's
what-
irrelevant.
we've
to
always done
royalty
this.
Sales. But nobody gets any. I mean, it's really no group of our kind gets much airplay. I mean, you might find get
So
a
it's
track play
so
once
it's
a
a
week.
word of
you know.
mouth thing then, really, isn't it?
With us,
The
we've always
music
sold
sales are
albums.
very powerful.
We sort of mostly sold albums from gigs though.
Gigs, yeah, we've always sold through.
I mean, it's so obvious. Like Trespass sold X amount, and the Nursery Crime sold X amount plus the New People, and so on. So I mean, like Foxtrot winning at number 12 straight in, right? And then the live album which came out after went straight at number 9, and then the last one came out and went straight at number 3. So next
Definitely
time,
progress.
Next time.
yeah.
Oh, who made the decision, or was it really a decision made that none of the monologues that Peter delivers should be on the live album? Because those took me completely by surprise. I knew that there was a lot of in-between stuff edited out.
Yeah, there was. Well, I mean, you get very bored of the jokes after a bit when you've been playing the album and you're mixing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I
Takes
mean,
up
time
space.
as well. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's
With a lot of music on that album.
Yeah, that was a long one.
And,
Very long.
You know, it's very difficult to get it on if you start putting too much of. We put one of Peter's stories on the back, you know.
Right.
You really need the whole thing, you know. Listening to it back deadpan like that, no, they sounded awful.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, hearing them the first time last night, they were tremendous.
Yeah, no, they're great. But you got to see them a bit, you know what I mean? And you build that, make it all a bit silly, you know what I mean? By sort of making out that the jokes are really funny and things when they're terrible. You know, it's the whole feel, whole atmosphere, and also it acts as a kind of break between the songs, a kind of humorous break between sort of numbers. Some of the songs get a bit intense. It's nice to have a sort of release, you know. And that wouldn't really work on an album so well, I don't think. It tends to break it up too much.
Especially with Peter playing the album.
yeah, spoken word.
Is that why another reason? Do you feel that drum solos sometimes have the same effect, or has nothing?
Yeah, I
there
don't
haven't
know.
been any drum solos on Genesis album.
I don't do drum solos with this band because since I've been with this band, I play all the bits that I don't really need to do a drum solo.
Right,
I mean,
right.
like,
There are certain drummers who don't need it.
I
It doesn't
would-
really
I
sort
would
of fit
repeat
with the
myself,
kind of
you
the
know,
feel
it's-
of the band, though. As I said, we
Right.
tend to build things on melody, and a drum solo is difficult to make melodic. I mean, you can do a sort of percussion solo, as it were, that could be melodic, you know, but I don't know, straight drum solo. I mean, I personally find drum solos incredibly boring, and it's nice if everybody can like everything that gets onto the albums, really. You know?
Okay.
We try to keep that. I mean, you can't always, you know. These
The only way I could listen to drum solos, and I hate to say it, but I mean, it's on that Spectrum album. when there are parts when you're just playing, just like sitting down and playing, as opposed to, I mean, Bill Brother, I remember talking to him about drum solos, right, and he said, you know, man, I just do that at the end of the drum solo and they go wild, you know.
Yeah.
And
drum solos
I mean,
have that quality.
it's a drag that, I mean, even he does it, you know what I mean? I mean, he doesn't do it with Crimson probably anymore, he's probably got it out there, but I know when he was with Yes, it was very much, I mean, he had to be forced to do a drum solo.
Oh, right. Well, the solo that's on Perpetual Change is just pathetic. I mean...
Well, that's I mean, he was right in not doing a solo for 3 years, and then Chris Welch and the rest of the band persuaded him to do one. And he ends up doing the things that every other drummer does, because no one really wants to know. I mean, you don't, if you do something incredibly technical, no one sees it, you know, no one hears it. All they want to do is just like the two bass drums going, and seeing you to do something, you know. And the only person that carries it off is Billy Cobham, because he can do it. You know, every other drummer like John Osmond, Ginger Baker, just gets them all going as fast as they can, just lips the rest of the beats between the bass drum. You know, I mean, it's all very well if you're going to do it in a group context.
I think drums are very much a kind of an instrument that's a part of a band, and not kind of a solo thing. It's not like a sort of piano or an acoustic 12-string or something like that, where, you know, you can sort of do things on your own. It's, I mean, it's a kind of, it makes music on its own, as it were. The drum's very much a thing that's sort of built into groups or orchestras or whatever it happens to be. They're a part of it, not a solo thing. See what I mean? I can't explain that.
I've seen Santana films, I mean, they use rhythm and percussion, so that there's a lot of it, and there's parts of it that are just unaccompanied by any it's just a bass or just an organ or a piano or something. And it really comes off because...
it also helps when you can have a couple of percussionists.
Oh yeah, right, I mean, I'm just but using generally a rhythm thing.
In this kind of band, though, you really don't need to take any solos. The music's so varied rhythmically that it gives you everything you could want to do with a drum band. It just doesn't seem like there's any need for a drum solo.
So we used to, in the old days, we haven't had many lately, in the last year or so, but we used to have quite frequent equipment breakdowns when it was like all the equipment was in a very small truck and we'd arrive and it
got jangled around.
Yeah. And I mean, one gig, we went on, with Graham Croydon, we went on stage to do Watcher. And it was before we had lights, our own light show, and before we had the set. But we went on and we were all standing there waiting for him to start and the organ wasn't working. And so we started off the set with a drum solo, you know what I mean? And I don't know, you sort of feel so deflated when something like that happens. But the drum solo used to be something that just occupied. I mean, I used to do something that used to please me, like I would do in a sound check. You know,
we started off by
trying to make people's heads.
The beginning of a drum solo was always trying to be humorous in case the breakdown ended soon. You just didn't really want to do a drum solo. It was also a one-handed drum solo. You know? You really sort of emphasise it, and then after a bit, you went on so long, you had to start doing a drum solo properly.
A natural breakdown features our world-renowned one-handed drum solo. Some of you may even have heard this before. 7 years ago, Philip Collins left to go to Russia to study for tonight's performance of the one-handed drum solo.
The thing was, I didn't know whether I had to stop or not. You know, because I used to do this, like the thing with the whistle. You know, last night when we were whistling. We were doing. I used to start it off like that, and occasionally add something else. And I didn't know if I started it whether everything was going to be fixed, and I'd be in the middle of some dramatic piece, and I'd have to just stop.
Is there anything that really determines the length of solos that any of the group members take?
Well, some of them aren't as much solos, are they? They're more like statements of themes.
Right.
I mean, for instance, the musical box solo from Tony is more like, I think, more as a theme rather than an improvised solo.
Yeah, I never think of what was really a solo. I mean, the only thing that does feel like a solo is the bit in the cinema show, the end of cinema show, when it's because it's like me and Mike and Phil kind of there for sort of like 5-6 minutes. You know? But it's still not an improvised thing.
Oh right.
It's written as a kind of just like a piece of music. It just happens to be one guy doing all the themes. You know.
The things Mike and I do, for instance, I mean, they change around and move around the same way as a lot of material just changes through evolution as opposed to sitting down and changing. I mean, things like the musical box, bits of that have changed. Supper's Ready especially has changed a lot of it in the later sections. Just things have come out and things have stayed with it.
I mean, the thing about in terms of a solo, length of those solos, if you like, it's just like, I mean, what's long enough to be, what's interesting, you know, as long as it's nice and as long as it's interesting. Just never let it go to the stage where it gets just self-indulgent, you know.
Hopefully it should fit somewhere.
And that's why they tend to be moderately brief. And the cinema show is a pretty long one, actually, probably slightly longer than I wanted to be. I mean, when we were doing that, I ended up, and it was about sort of 12, 15 minutes long, you know. So I had to start editing madly. It was very difficult to get it down as short as it was.
It's one of those things that was really good fun to play.
It's great
you know,
fun.
when we were rehearsing, the three of us used to
It
go
comes
and rehearse and
across.
just play for ages on this rhythm. And some of it was probably better than the album, in fact.
Yeah.
I suppose if you keep takes.
Yeah, that's the trouble.
That's the advantage of doing this, like recording in a house. Because when we always get, wherever, I mean, however duff the place is, whether we're rehearsing or writing, usually we get some kind of situation whereby we can work and all feel happy about it, you know. And we end up getting sounds and the atmosphere, and always sounds powerful if we want it to sound powerful, or gentle if we want it to sound gentle. In the studio, we have so much trouble, comparatively anyway, to try and get the sounds we want. So by taking the studio to us and recording it in the same way as we've been hearing it all the time we've been writing it, it's probably it'd be different.
Well, the things we do when we recorded some of the last album. I mean, when we were rehearsing it on a cassette, and the sort of feel on that cassette was much better than what we ended up with on the album. But we kind of sort of captured a bit of that.
But I'd like to do it. I was supposed to. He's doing another album now, actually, but we just came away just as we were supposed to do it, so I couldn't do it again. But it's nice working with. Occasionally, just doing.
Does Flash have much of a following in England? Or?
Splash is split up now.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, they split up in LA just before Christmas.
They never really had following.
No, it's weird actually, because people have come up to me, a couple of people on this tour, and said, compared us to Flash. I mean, comparing us to Yes. But I mean, the fact is that Flash, who are, you know, sort of about a year old, and I mean, much as I like Peter, he's like definitely Yes influenced. And the rest of the musicians in that band just went up to his standard. He's a very good guitarist, and he needs people to bounce off, because his ideas alone aren't good enough, really. Because there was no like sieve in the band. There was nothing being stopped from coming out. They were just recording everything they wrote, and they could have been a lot better than they turned out.
Do you by any chance know what's happening with Arthur Brown lately? Have you ever listened to any
Do you
of his?
know our lights man is Arthur Brown's old lights man?
Who?
Did you know that? Maybe you did.
Oh, wait a minute.
Because someone else mentioned Arthur
Dennis
Brown.
Taylor?
No, Les Adey.
Oh, okay, yeah.
In the Kingdom Come.
Right.
And Arthur Brown, it's weird actually, this is really strange, but Les has written, with the old members of Kingdom Come, he's written a thing based on Hamlet, a musical sort of thing that lasts about an hour or something. And I think Mike and I might be playing bass and drums on it.
Really?
And Arthur Brown's singing on it.
So he's still alive and kicking, huh?
Yeah, he's just...
Because I know that Kingdom Come split up, and I've just sort of been waiting for what he's going to pull out of his hat
I think he's doing
next.
something, but I believe he's being managed by someone pretty heavy.
Yeah, I think he was sort of thinking of doing sort of singles or something. Hit singles.
I don't know. Have you listened to the first Kingdom Come album, Galactic Zoo Dossier?
No, I haven't heard anything with him.
It's a pretty amazing piece of engineering. That's one of the things that's just a real showcase on it, is the engineering and production.
Yeah,
because
I think that
never stops
That
moving.
is, I think the guitarist did most of that. He's producing this thing too. He does all the Kingdom Come stuff. He's a very good guitarist, supposedly.
Yeah, Andy Dalby.
Yeah. No, I imagine with people like Iggy Stooge and getting so much publicity, you know. People like Arthur Brown, who started all that off, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Probably didn't influence Iggy Stooge, but he was the first in England, and Kim Fowley and all that crew. The sort of the weirdos.
Yeah.
That's made Arthur Brown pretty sick, you know. He wants to try and...
Well, he must be one of the first guys that just sort of like...
Yeah, he was, right. But I mean, like, now he's been forgotten about, and all the people that sort of might have been influenced him in the past, since taken over. Well, you know, nothing else is in press.
That's true. But his music isn't on the radio. If I have heard.
I saw them in London once when they did a concert, and the only reason I went down to the place, there's a real hole And I went down there because I was rumoured there's going to be a jam session and I just fancied playing, so they were on there and I couldn't believe it.
I'll tell
It
you
was really wild.
Has there ever been, one way or another, any sort of religious influence on your music? Because a lot of times it does speak of gods and things like that.
No, we just use, any reference to, obviously we'll have a private philosophy. We use myths and legends of every kind, and that includes religious ones, and that the Bible's a great source of epic statements, particularly stuff that's ready,
Right.
a lot of stuff's just lifted straight from Revelation, really, and it just sounds great when you sing it,
Mm-hmm.
As I said before, we're not really trying to get anything across with our music, it is just fantasy, and we use just any tools that we can find.
Because I was wondering about that. There are definite statements sort of along those lines of things like "Watcher of the Skies,"
Well,
and that seems like a statement type song to me. The lyrics.
Yeah, well, I wrote those lyrics with Mike actually. They're sort of it's just like when you want to write a science fiction story, you might you take various hypotheses and various ideas. You don't necessarily believe in them at all.
Mm-hmm.
You just state a whole possibility, and you carry it through a bit. That's all really what we did. In fact, it was based to some extent on a book by Arthur C. Clarke called Childhood's End. Was the idea of the character in it. It was, that's all it is. It doesn't go any further than that, really. It has a few things.
But it was intended to be a view of Earth.
It was a view of Earth, sort of like an alien view, just of Earth at the stage when there's no people on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a possible change in the sort of like human race. When it comes to stage maybe when it doesn't need bodies or something. That was the idea of it. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it does, it's just an idea.
You draw some very strange people at times, so I'd imagine.
What, to go concerts?
To your concerts.
I don't know really, actually. It seems in the long run, once the audience is sort of filtered down to what really want to see it, But the audience, like our publicity attracts a lot of weird people.
Yeah.
But then the actual group, people who stay with us, seem to be incredibly straight people, actually. I don't know, it's difficult to say really. And as I said, we appeal to a very wide age range. And we don't particularly appeal to very sort of strong drug people or anything like that. We find rather the opposite as a rule. I don't know why. Maybe we're sort of clean living or something. But nevertheless, the actual sort of the public image, when people haven't seen us, tends to attract us incredibly. And a lot of people who come just for sort of glitter and things, which is a strange audience. They don't really like it.
Yours is definitely a show that someone who's not prepared to really digest all the stuff, they just shouldn't bother. Shouldn't even turn their head and look when they walk by the theater. It seems to me.
Yeah, there are some things that people can just get into quite superficially, and a lot of people have liked that. The Knife used to be an example of that, really.
Mm-hmm.
And Musical Box, I think, still is to some extent. It's a very easy number. You don't have to try very hard to get into that. The music's quite simple, and the visuals are very sort of obvious in it. It's an easy number to get. It's not the number that goes down best, let's say, in the act. Generally.
Do you feel that in any sort of way that you're in competition with Wakeman and Emerson?
No, I never looked at it like that. I think both of those are technically much better than I. But I find a lot of what both can do sometimes a bit soulless,
Mm-hmm.
I like what a lot of them. I like the Nice very much, and I liked some of what Wakeman's done. I particularly like what he did with on Hunky Dory actually. David Black, it was really nice, very simple things, really effective. And I liked his solo album better than I liked what he did with Yes. I'm not a great fan of Yes actually.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like some of what they do, but I can't say I like them universally at all. A lot of things they do which I can't get into. Maybe it's because the music is closer to what we do than some other bands, and therefore it's easy to criticise.
Have you heard anything about the Journey to the Center of the Earth concert, or?
We got very good reviews and things, but I didn't see it, and I don't know anything about it beyond that.
Because I heard they were going to get it out really fast in album form because I guess they were afraid of pirate tapes and bootlegs and things like that. Have you ever had any bootleg albums released?
No. You know you're making it when you've got a bootleg album with.
Yes,
so not important enough yet. I've heard of Bootlegs though, but I've never actually seen them. It's possible there has been. There was supposed to be one in England, I think, but I think it must have been a very amateur affair that never got anyone. I don't know any more about it.
Are there any other things available on disc?
Other than the album?
Other than well, the 6 albums that I've got and Twilight Ale House. Are there any other?
Yeah, there's a few singles during the first era. Well, you know the
but nothing that represents Genesis now. Really.
Oh, there's Happy the Man, which was it doesn't really represent us now, but it was released during it was released after Nursery Crime, before Foxtrot.
As a 45.
As a 45, it was with. I don't know if it was ever released out here. It was released in England. It's like a short, sort of 12-string sort of number. It's a happy thing.
Yeah, is that still currently available in England? Or?
Doubt it. It might be somewhere, but it's just I doubt they'd bother to. But there are about 3 singles before, on the Genesis Revelation kind of era, and a few B-sides and things that went on. We released a hell of a lot of singles in our time actually, and none of them done anything.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things.
Well, you don't really think of yourself as
we did originally. We did originally.
As a
and
single.
on the Genesis Revelation album, that was just an album of singles.
Yeah. That struck me very much as a Moody Blues-ish type composition. Did you
was
feel any of the same?
Moody Blues in those days, I suppose, as much as any one of the Beatles and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just our first attempts at writing, and that's what we came out with. Well, I like listening to the album still quite well. It's probably nostalgia more than anything.
What are some of your favorite groups? Do you have any really? Or?
Well, I was saying before, I said it was you, wasn't it? That I like a lot of sort of like albums and singles or things, single tracks by various people, without sort of liking people universally. But I do like the Beach Boys. I like virtually everything they do, and I listen to Elton John and Stevie Wonder. I listen to him actually. I like him very much. The latest albums and Focus. The Beatles, I love Simon Garfunkel. You know, those are the kind of things I really used to like.
Yeah.
Groups like that.
I
don't tend to listen that much to rock music now. I mean, I tend to listen to quite a lot of classical music, I suppose, if I listen to anything, but I don't tend to listen to that much because I get a bit sick of music sometimes. You know?
Yeah, I actually think that would happen because...
Well, I hardly ever listen to our own albums.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, people all talk about, I forget really about the albums often. I listen to, the ones I tend to listen to, the earlier ones, I listen to, say, I maybe listen to Trespass or listen to the odd track off Nursery Crime or something, but I haven't listened to Selling England now, I shouldn't have for about, I listened to a few weeks after it was released.
Do you ever, have you ever found yourself in a position where during the final mix down of the album you're getting tired of the material?
God, I hated Selling England when we released it. I mean, I was so bored of every track on it. In fact, we were all bored stiff of every track when we recorded it, which was a bad thing. But it just happened that we'd rehearsed it. You see, the bad thing about it was that whole album was written, rehearsed, and performed and recorded, like in one go. And we worked very hard on it in some of those things, particularly Moonlit Night. I just didn't want to know about it. It was just awful. It's never been one of my favourite tracks. I mean, that's probably my least favourite track on the album anyhow. We played it to death.
Yeah,
trying to get it out. It took a lot of trouble. That particular track was very difficult to write.
Yeah, I think one of the most effective moments in the whole thing is after Peter says, I think it's you know what you are and you don't give a damn. Yeah. And then the very, very faint chorus mellotronic comes in. That's really, really nice.
Yeah.
And then as it builds up to the whole
I think
chorus.
it's, listen to it now, if I listen to it sort of detached, I like the party very much actually. I think the number doesn't hang together as well as some of our other compositions. Maybe that's strange. But in fact, the last part of it, the last minute of that track, the very quiet part, is my favourite bit on the album, I think. We did that, it was improvised completely. And we'd done sort of lots of improvisations on it. And we did about, that was edited down from about 5-minute improvisation we did. We just took a 1 minute slot out of it and used it.
Yeah, I was quite surprised at how well it was reproduced live.
Well, it's just, in fact, I don't think it was that good last night, but sometimes it can be really nice. It can be sort of, you can really get the feel of it. Last night we were a bit conscious that some of the audience were not enjoying it.
Yeah, that's...
And you can't help but be affected by that. We've tried to get you rushed through it a bit and do a few things.
They're very small.
No, I appreciate that, but it's just like, it was a, I mean, before we went on stage, it was making this amazing amount of noise, like a football crowd.
Oh yeah, that's Winterland.
That's how it is.
And I'll tell you, the audience you got last night was really very different from the audience that usually goes there, and you're fortunate, very fortunate, you didn't play on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
People out there screaming,
Well,
boogie, boogie.
maybe that was worked out beforehand, I don't know.
Thank you for a very enjoyable concert. It was great meeting you. Nice. Love to see you. I'm going to get going too.
I'll see you next time.
Thanks, people.